Hey everybody, welcome back to Historical Light, an independent Masonic show focused on the historical events and aspects within Freemasonry. As always, I'm your host, Brother Alex Powers, past master of Gardner Lodge, District Deputy 9A, and current director of the Kansas Lodge Research, and super proud to have with us our co-host today, Brother Robert Marshall. Shoot it over to you, brother.
Hey guys, Robert Marshall here, still secretary at Waco Lodge, deputy director of the Kansas Lodge of Research. Currently District Deputy Grand Master at Large of the Grand Lodge of Texas and a member of the Grand Lodge of Texas History Committee.
Right on. Well, guys, today you'll notice there's just two of us. A little lonely, but we've got a big topic to talk about. So everyone knows right now, because it's not independent or, special to Kansas. It's not special to Texas. It's going around the entire world. And that is this virus that we got going on. Started in China, has come through, and now we see it affecting the U.S. all the way through. We're going to be talking about that a whole lot. And really because it's living history, and we're seeing it is affecting Masonry in major ways. We have quite a few Grand Lodges. We have a list here, and I'm sure it's not an exhaustive list by any means, but we have a list here of grand jurisdictions that have either called off Masonic meetings and gatherings altogether for the time being. Some have, left it up to the masters and so forth. Grand Lodges, including ours, have been pushed and shrunk. So just a bunch going on. And it's affecting not just the grand jurisdiction, but down to the individual lodge and how brothers interact in this time. We've got some people on quarantine in their houses and going nuts. So we're just going to kind of cover all that and then tie it in with some history back in the day of obviously not the same exact thing we're dealing with right now, but some relating cases that we can tie in. So first off, Brother Robert, how is this whole virus affecting where you're at down there in Texas?
Generally, the grocery stores are all raided like they are everywhere else.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a greater sense of skepticism in Texas, just by nature of the kinds of people we have here. I think there's a lot of people who haven't been taking it very seriously because they think it's overblown or it's media hype or something along those lines. And hopefully they end up being right, but I'm afraid they're not. And who knows what kind of ramifications there will be of them not taking it seriously. Masonically, there was kind of a domino effect of events being canceled. I was supposed to be speaking at White Right Lodge in North Central Texas Wednesday, then be there at the Grand Lodge of Kansas for a couple of days, and then out in West Texas and Abilene on Saturday, and all of those things are now canceled. And I've seen lodge after lodge cancel their stated meetings, some of them looking ahead as far as May.
Yeah.
And if you look at the numbers and the types of people who are most at risk, I think it makes a lot of sense for Masonic lodges to be canceling events. Our guys are most at risk. So the Grand Master first sent out a message that made it very clear that there was going to potentially be some cancellations of events. Did cancel the Grand Master Conference, a Grand Master Conference, and he now has sent out a new notice as of, I think it was this morning, that no Masonic meetings in Texas of more than 50 people should be taking place.
Oh, okay.
And also included language that I would say strongly discouraged meetings at all, but he's leaving that up to worshipful masters to decide.
Yep.
And as far as I know, most are choosing to err on the side of caution and are canceling any immediately upcoming meetings.
Sure. So yeah, Grand Lodge, Kansas. That was a bummer for me, man. That was a chance for me and you to get to hang out. Obviously, Robert was gonna make his way up to Kansas. We live just a few miles apart, so we don't get to hang out in person too often. But yeah, so Kansas is kind of an odd scenario. They didn't actually cancel it, but they have shrunk it. So the initial plan was to push through, but last week, or yeah, I guess last week, the city of Wichita, which we were holding there in the Hyatt Regency Hotel, city of Wichita came out and said no meetings over, I want to say it was 150 or 250. I think it was 250. Um, was the official number that was put out, and obviously the attendance coming in was supposed to be over that, which there was kind of that skepticism. Well, maybe that many people's not going to show up since we have all these scares. But then they had talk that the mayor there was actually going to lower it all the way down to possibly even 50 at the time. So even their backup location, which is the Scottish Rite Cathedral there, was shot out of the picture. They needed to get out of Wichita. So COA hopped on a important meeting, phone call, and kind of decided what they were going to do. A lot of us thought they were going to, push it, just postpone it and hold it as normal. But they actually decided to go ahead and hold it same day. So it'll be this Friday, but they're only letting max 50 people in the door. So that's going to be the pertinent Grand Lodge officers have to be there to get voted in, installed. And then the rest of the room is going to be filled with a quorum of sitting masters only. So once they hit 50, door shuts, that's it. So interesting. I mean, first time in my lifetime this has happened. The only time in Kansas Masonry we know that this situation of the 50 or less has happened was during World War II, where there's actually a group limit put on there of only 50 people or less due to just the threat of attack. So we've only seen this one time in Kansas history, but it wasn't for a flu or a virus as we see today. It was due to the war effort. Looking back through the Grand Lodge proceedings, I found one other time, and I want to say it was 1918, and that was due to the flu. That it wasn't canceled, but it was just pushed a month. It went from February to March. And as me and Robert were talking in the green room, I'm kind of wondering. I haven't looked into it that deep, but I'm kind of wondering if that's the reason we hold it in March today. If it just got pushed and just kind of remained there, which would be kind of a neat, interesting fact. But I think while we're on that topic of Kansas, so our Grand Master came out and released a video trying to explain that. I think Brother Morrow, Most Worshipful Brother Morrow, did a pretty good job explaining that and being very transparent with the craft and the public. So I'm going to try to throw that on real quick. And while I'm doing that, kind of what they've done at this time is leave the option of meetings. So he came out and did an edict, and he left the option of meetings up to the sitting masters of lodges. And just with kind of the caution put out there of if you're not feeling good, if you're elderly, just don't risk it, stay home. But at this time, he's leaving it up to the sitting masters of the lodges. But here's the kicker: is obviously we don't know what's going to happen, because since that has came out, we see day by day stuff's hitting the fan just a little bit progressively more. And so they could at any time put us on, a citywide, statewide lockdown, and we'd have to deal with that. That far overseas grand jurisdiction by all means.
Contrary to many conspiracy theorists' beliefs.
Exactly, right. But the other thing we've got in the mix is, since they are proceeding with Grand Lodge, Most Worshipful Morrow's edict is actually only valid until Thursday, when he's steps out of office. So then we're going to see what our new Grand Master, Most Worshipful Tony Borum, decides from there. And I think he's kind of on the same thought process from what I've gathered so far, but obviously that's something we've got to judge day by day. And as we see more and more closings, I don't know which way it's going to go. He could easily stop meetings in Kansas. And there's ups and downs to that. I kind of err on the side of caution. Like you were talking down in Texas, you got a lot of people that are kind of optimistic about the situation. We've definitely seen that here as well. Uh, the last 3 or 4 days, you kind of see that turning a bit. I'm
Mhm.
starting to see more like, oh crap, coming out of people.
Yep, same thing's happening here. I've seen a couple of the guys who express skepticism or uh, singing a very different tune now, but there are still quite a few out there who are saying things like, "Well, it's easy. If you don't feel well, then don't go to lodge." But if if you've
Yeah.
paid attention to the medical experts, then it's pretty clear it's not that easy because you can be contagious without being symptomatic. So,
Yeah,
yeah, slowly but surely, I think people are starting to take it more and more seriously, thankfully.
for sure. So one of the sad things for me, I had brother Doc Kanoki. I don't know if he's the oldest guy in our lodge, but he just turned 92. He's an inspiration to me, man. 92 years old, he makes me seem like a wimp, I swear. But he called me up the other day, and he was just totally bummed out because his whole life is shutting down. Kind of all the things geared towards the elderly, which he fills up his time with. They're the first things to cut. So he called me just all didn't know what to do with himself, saying he plays bridge on these couple nights a week, and that is ended for the foreseeable future. He volunteers at a couple places. They've stopped the volunteer positions, and he's like, God, I hope we have lodge. And I'm like, I don't know yet. I hate to rip that away from you as well, but I guess we'll see what happens. Our city master lodge right now would like to. He expressed his wish to keep meetings going if possible, but kind of sending that same uh, brotherly notice out of if you're not feeling well, please don't attend. If you have concern, you're not required to be here by any means. So don't go against your own best judgment. But obviously, we're going to see as this continues to kind of get larger and larger as it appears to be. We're going to see where that's going to go. So let me queue up this video here and see if I can do a screen share on it. You able to hear that, Robert?
Yep.
Cool.
Elmore, Grandmaster Kansas. As many of you may know, Sedgwick County issued a directive today that limits public assemblies to 250 and less. We have it on good information that other government entities are considering issuing similar directives and dropping that number even to 100 and even maybe 50. We don't know where this is going to end up. We have some pretty hefty financial obligations in Wichita to put on the 164th annual communication. This is making things a little bit difficult. So we've been discussing this all day since it came up. And we had a meeting this evening, and the council administration, along with a number of our advisors, past Grand Masters, KMF, have all decided that we will have to move the annual communication and very strictly limit the amount of people that can be at this annual communication. So it will no longer be held in Wichita. This is going to be moved to Emporia on Friday the 20th. We're going to start at 12:30. And we're only going to run until about 5 o'clock. The only business we're going to do is the acceptance of reports, election of Grand Lodge officers, and the installation of Grand Lodge officers. So we're having to limit this a number because of the coronavirus, COVID-19. This is a different situation. We haven't had a situation like this since World War II. James Trice, who was Grand Master in 1945, the federal government limited assemblies to 50 and less, and consequently, that's all we could have at our annual communication then. Very similar situation. It wasn't the flu or wasn't a virus. It was war. So we're limiting our attendance to sitting masters of lodges, and we'll have to limit the number of those. We have to have 25 in attendance to be able to do any business at all. So we will be contacting sitting masters who are already registered. For those people who are already registered for the annual communication, we will start making refunds on Monday, and you'll be able, I do urge you that if you have hotel reservations in Wichita, that you immediately get those canceled. Most hotels have a 48-hour cancellation policy before your dated check-in. So this has really been a trying time, and I hope all of our brethren are safe. We're concerned about it. In fact, we'll be issuing an edict likely tomorrow that and incoming Grandmaster Tony Borum will continue this, as any edict that I put on is only good until Friday. So allowing for the next 60 days for lodge masters not to have meetings if they so choose to protect their members. So bear with us in this very trying time, and I hope everyone stays safe, and hope no one gets ill from this. Thank you very much. Good day.
So as you heard there, get my screen back where it was. Yeah, obviously, Most Worshipful Morrow is kind of distraught. You know, I mean, come on, so much planning and effort goes into these Grand Lodge sessions that we do, and for it to kind of very last minute just fall apart on you, yeah, it's heartbreaking. I know for so many Masons, and no matter what jurisdiction you're in, annual communication is awesome because it's brethren from all across the state, plus other states, like, you know, Brother Marshall was going to come up and see us, plus outside the country, just, you know, a chance to be in one place with all those brothers at one time. Something a lot of guys look forward to. I know at my lodge, we have a new brother, Brother Justin Staley, just fresh got his Master Mason. He was working hard so he could attend Grand Lodge. So, you know, obviously it's kind of a kick in the pants, but it is what it is. I mean, what are you going to do? You know, people's safety has to come first. So, yeah, I don't know. Robert, you had your Grand Lodge already, so you're able to make it through. Said meetings down there kind of the same way, where it's up to the master. Do you think that's going to change in the near future, or have you heard anything on that front?
If I had heard anything on that front, I would not be able to say I had heard anything on that front. So let's say I have not heard anything on that front, and I also would not be shocked if there is a formal ban of Masonic activity for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
But you know, the leaders of the jurisdiction are, I'm sure, constantly in deliberation over it. Grandmaster Underwood is probably one of the best guys I've ever met to be in that position. If I was going to trust somebody to make the right decision, whatever that decision is, he's at the top of the list of guys I'd want to be making it. So He'll make whatever is most likely to be the right decision. And the 70,000 plus Masons of Texas really ought to do everything they can to back him. If they think it's a hoax and he bans activity, then they should get behind him for doing what he thought was the right decision. If they think it's the next great Spanish flu and he doesn't cancel meetings, then they should still back him because he was just trying to make the right decision. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's something we were talking about down here just earlier this week. It's in those positions in something like this, the crowd seems to be so split of either, out of touch with it, over in touch with it, that it really doesn't matter what decision you make, you're going to go under fire for it. If you cancel meetings, guys are going to be totally upset about it. If you don't, guys are totally upset about it. It's just one of those things where, it's a servant leadership position, and you don't go into it knowing that every decision you make is going to be golden, because it's not. You've got to make the decisions for what you see as the best for the craft as a whole to keep it proceeding future. Yeah, I mean, obviously the scary thing here, me and my wife were talking about, is this particular virus, this coronavirus, has seemed to target elderly people, which makes up a mass majority of our Freemasonic population. That's kind of terrifying. I mean, so that's where it really comes in with the seriousness of some of these grand jurisdictions saying, hey, no meetings. Because I mean, could you imagine that if we had an outbreak among older Masonic men that could cripple lodges, if not grand lodges, in a heartbeat? I mean, we've been talking for years about a decline. We don't need a max exodus all at once by any means. So, yeah, I mean, that's scary, man.
It is. Sure. I agree. The average age is somewhere around 68, I think, right now in the country. So, the average age of Masons, I should say. So,
yeah,
Freemasonry is certainly at risk. I mentioned Spanish flu. I actually just ran across something I'd like to share here if I can figure out how. Sure. So you see concerned wife looking on, doctor sitting there with a top hat by his feet, and it says, "What's the matter with him, doctor?" He has all the symptoms of the prevailing ailment. He's got the grip. Ah, sakes, that's nothing. He said he'd got that 10 years ago when he come home one night from a Masonic or an Oddfellows meeting, only he didn't take on quite so bad as this. Reckon I'll have to keep him in nights again. So I guess he'd had it. He must have been pretty sore or something coming home from lodge one night, and told her he'd gotten the grip. Bit of Spanish flu Masonic humor.
There you go.
And hopefully that's the only kind of connection between the current pandemic and Freemasonry is jokes like that. It'd be bad news if any of the guys really got it.
Until you let the Illuminati conspiracists get a hold of everything, then, they like to run wild with it.
Yeah, they do. All right. How can I give you? Do you already have the screen back?
Nope, still sharing.
There you go.
There we go.
I'll learn how to use this thing one day.
So, yeah. So obviously we see that it has affected Masonry all over the place quite heavily. Now, we've seen over this last week quite a few Grand Lodge jurisdictions deciding to kind of close things down altogether, just as we see, kids' schools and workplaces and stuff quarantining. So are Masonic jurisdictions. So we're going to read through a few of these. Obviously, like I said in the beginning of the episode, it's not an exhaustive list by any means. I haven't done the homework to go through every single one and keep up to date with it. It's been insane, and still have a day job to go through. But we have a brother here in Ontario, Canada, saying, "Brethren, due to the rapidly evolving public health advising concern of the novel coronavirus, also named COVID-19, has been decided to cancel all Masonic events and activities for an indefinite period. That's one I haven't heard just yet. You know, they've been putting on there a month or, you know, until a certain date or whatever, but this is an indefinite period. Have you heard anything about the ultimate state of the virus in Canada or in the Ontario area?
I have not. I guess there was the general news that they were closing their borders, which was going to kill my upcoming
Yeah,
road trip to Alaska.
for sure. Or make you a Canadian for a while if they close it afterwards. So
And just keep me.
you have to join us from up north.
Now you got me wondering if that's not just if the whole thing's not just a scheme put together to uh, keep me out of Texas.
Right. Let's see. We've also got a grand notice here from Commonwealth of Virginia. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing of these, but just kind of want to get to the meat of them. Decision to postpone or reschedule a stated communication for the present time remains the worshipful master's decision. So sounds like Virginia's kind of passing it on the same route, leaving it up to the individual lodges, which, you know, I at least last week, I agreed with that. You know, when it came out, and that's the decision they made in Canada. I still think it's a strong decision. You know, but I'm getting more and more, as I said, especially we're seeing people kind of open their eyes a little bit to what's going on. I am seeing the value to just kind of holding off things for a bit. I mean, it's no fun. I know my kids are going nuts. They want to go over to their friend's house and have sleepovers and stuff, and you know, we've put a halt to that. So this is kind of, you know, Masonry is kind of the big boys hangout. So we're getting the same withdrawals here as our kids are. What else we got here? We've got Grand Lodge of Michigan released a notification here. If the worshipful master is convinced that the population of his lodge who would attend would be at risk of contracting the coronavirus, then he should cancel this month's meeting. Your lodge must conduct at least 10 regular communications throughout the year. So yeah, same story there. They're kind of putting it under that arm of the worshipful master, which seems to be a kind of a predominant decision. You know, obviously we ran by the one from Canada there that was, you know, just kind of killed everything indefinitely for the time being. Got one here from Grand Lodge of Oregon, which I believe they were one of the ones that likewise kind of killed everything. Here we go. I'm acting today to cancel all meetings which are not absolutely essential through March 31st, 2020, beginning with the currently scheduled Masonic charges. All Masons are advised to stay home unless they are absolutely needed elsewhere. So Oregon, it's one of those ones just not messing around. They want to keep everybody in, get them better, and try to get past this thing. Here's one that I saw just scrolling through Facebook. Freemasons Hall in Grand Lodge of England. They posted a flyer here saying to help fight the coronavirus, Freemasons Hall is closed to the public from the 16th of March. Keep an eye on our website to stay informed. So that's another one of those indefinite. They're not going to open up until things are clear. And actually, I got an email, Most Worshipful Bloom, saying they're stopping foot traffic to our Grand Lodge building. So they, you know, still have the staff there, and they said if there's anything pertinent that you need to drop off, they actually have a little vestibule and kind of a slide window at the front there. They'll just grab it from you there and kind of send you on their way. They're not going to let anybody in the building, which I agree. I mean, you know, your office is very similar to your home in that space, and you know, the less people you can let in there, I think is better. You know, they say this virus is looking to spread in several different ways. The air is not a huge manner, but it's been seen to be an issue in confined spaces where it kind of hangs around and doesn't have that chance to air out. So, I mean, you get in the office, it's not good news.
You know, something I've found interesting in looking back at connections with the Spanish flu and Freemasonry is that
Yeah.
some of the larger temples around the country in 1918 got converted into infirmaries. So, like the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania,
Is that right?
I found a couple of big temples in Indiana, one in Asheville, North Carolina. Actually, the one in Asheville, North Carolina looked interesting. I would need to do more research to verify, but a quick look seemed to suggest that they were not allowing African Americans who were sick with the flu to go into the regular hospital. So the Masonic Lodge opened itself up as a hospital for African Americans.
Oh, wow.
But it's interesting to kind of look at it through the lens of, the last time the nation had was involved in a major pandemic like this. Freemasonry was thriving. In some ways, it was peaking or nearing a membership peak and organizational health, while the general public was suffering a pandemic. So we had the infrastructure and the resources, and of course the enormous Masonic temples, all available to help deal with the situation. So a lot of Red Crosses set up inside the Masonic temples. Whereas today, because of, you talked about the decline earlier, I don't know that there really are that many buildings that are in as good a shape as they would need to be to qualify for being a medical facility.
Agreed. Yeah. Especially with, just the sheer age on them. That can cause a lot of its own concerns when you have people that are already of a lowered immune or a sickness like that. That might definitely not be the smartest place to put them. And I know we were talking before the show. You brought up the fact that Kansas was actually kind of one of the center targets for that Spanish flu, and found it kind of interesting. They didn't really mention it much in our Grand Lodge proceedings. As we mentioned, and most worshipful mentioned in his speech there. The only other time in Kansas history that we saw Grand Lodge get shrunk down to the 50 mark was actually for a World War II effort, not for sickness. The only other sickness we saw was, looks like 1919. And they pushed it from, February to March, and just kind of kept on trucking as normal. And that's really the only listing I found of it in our grand proceedings there. I don't remember reading anything about it in our lodge minutes. So just kind of an interesting perspective, knowing how big of a deal that was at the time. And
well, yeah, and it's strange because where another way that one was different than now is it really targeted young men. So if you were between the age of 15 and 45, you were really at risk for Spanish flu in 1918. I know Camp MacArthur here, the Army base in Waco at that time, had over 200 deaths. And of course, that was important to this lodge because we had 1,000 new members at this lodge that year, primarily due to Camp MacArthur. So I'm sure some of those numbers carried over. But same thing here. Through a quick look through the minutes, I wasn't finding too many references. I did find quite a few memorials of brothers who had recently passed, but none that specifically mentioned influenza or anything like that.
right. So digging through our grand annual proceedings from back in the day, we were trying to, obviously we brought up a couple from Kansas here. Spanish flu touched a bunch. We were trying to find some other historical connections to tie in with, kind of, obviously it's a different situation, but brothers in our past that have experienced something like what we're experiencing now and kind of gone through those same troubles in life and lodge life in a mix. And that Spanish flu epidemic was kind of the biggest one that we found. Going through the Kansas proceedings, we found some communications from several different Grand Lodges that, so you can see that. I mean, that was just widespread. Kansas Grand Lodge, like we said, pushed off a month, but we also show in here that Kentucky Grand Lodge, owing to the flu epidemic, was postponing from October to December, pushed out 2 months there. We show that Ohio, Now, this was the weird one we were talking about. So Ohio had to push off, and then they were trying to meet, and they had to have that quorum, and they couldn't make it. So it just said that they kept opening day after day until the constitutional quorum should attend. So they just weren't having very much luck, and just kept on trying day after day.
Mhm.
Kind of an interesting way to term it, but what happens. We show looks like West Virginia in 1918 had to call off until December. Doesn't list when their actual original meeting should have been there, but so what we can see, through history, this isn't the first time that this kind of mass panic, worry, sickness is spread, and Masons have had to deal with this. But this one is definitely interesting. I think in a big perspective, a reason why we're obviously talking about it so much today and maybe didn't hear about it so much back then is just the mass abundance of media that we have today. And I think that's, why we were talking in the beginning, how some guys were just, still are not fully on board with the seriousness. And we see it, on Facebook all day long. And I was kind of leaning towards that side in the beginning as well. Media likes to push you in that direction, but if it wasn't, it sure seems like it's getting serious now. But regardless, I've said since the beginning, it's honestly less the virus that I am personally scared of, and more the fear in people. That has been the biggest thing that's concerned me. You were talking about the shops down in Texas. Their stores are pretty bare shelved. Just this weekend we had to go shopping, and we were seeing the same thing on Facebook about the local grocery store was pretty bare. It was kind of sad. We had to be strategic, not to go and stockpile, but just to get our standard groceries. We had to be strategic and get up and actually wait in line for the store to open. Like we were trying to get some exclusive item that just hit the market, but no, we were just trying to get some milk and bread. And the sad thing was we got there at 6 a.m. right when they opened. We got everything we needed. Well, all we thought we did. About 3 p.m. that afternoon, I realized, there was 1 or 2 items I need for the week. And we ventured back in, and just between 6 to, it was like 2 p.m., it was empty. I mean, it was like scary empty. And, that's the big thing that concerns me is just, people's reaction in that, what we take for granted of, the everyday luxuries of life that we have, that system that holds that up can crumble real quick when those kind of actions are taken. So, as they were saying on the press conference and stuff, every, last few days, definitely get what you need to get to, keep your family safe. But at the same time, try to keep that in mind, that acting too irrationally, too quickly is also not a good thing. Got to have that balance that we talk about in Masonry quite often.
In looking through the Grand Lodge proceedings, I did find this, which is not specific to, but there was one mention of, quote, the recent Armageddon in the 1918 Grand Lodge proceedings, and I suspect that could have referred to the flu epidemic or pandemic, or it might have also been a reference to World War I. I don't know. It's hard to figure out which of the two, but that year in Texas, it appears that 1,097 Masons died in
Yeah. Beautiful imagery in those days. I mean, it's such powerful imagery. We just don't see it. I mean, we've got some great guys that are coming out and emerging now that are bringing that back, but man, we just do not have that imagery that we used to have. So powerful, so beautiful.
I hate to pull from the flu topic, but I do have some new artifacts I could share.
Oh, sweets.
We've got from a little bit before the 1918 era, I've been talking about too much. Here is the Cotton Palace. I don't know how well you can see that, but
I see it pretty good.
The Cotton Palace was an event that took place in Waco And it was a worldwide event, kind of like a world fair. They released inventions, and kings and queens from around the world came.
Sure.
Um, we've got interesting photographs that came to me from a collector antique shop and got in touch with me. Um, these are childhood and baby photographs of Paul Tyson, who was a member of Waco Lodge and a pioneer of the sport of football. He invented the option play and came up with the idea for sending assistant coaches to play them. We now know them as scouts. He really developed a number of different ideas for the sport of football. And last but not least, recently I've been traveling around Texas talking about Richard Bach. He was the grandson of Benjamin Franklin and a charter member of the Grand Lodge of Texas, who in the presentation I've been giving, I argue that he was actually extremely important to early Freemasonry in Texas and has been sadly forgotten as a result of political really a sort of political assassination that happened to him during his lifetime and in the aftermath. So he was kind of intentionally erased from the memory of Texas history, although he was witness to some of the most important moments in Texas history. So in researching him, I ran across this and picked it up. It's a signed banknote from July 4th, 1813, and I'm going to try to get it in focus, and it looks like I'm going to fail. But he signed it down there in his capacity with the state of Pennsylvania at that time. So we've been adding some things here to the Waco Masonic Museum, and I've got this. This is from the George Washington birthday celebration parade in Laredo from, I'm going to guess the 60s or 70s, but just a few weeks ago, I joined one of our frequent listeners, Ruben Bassan III. Brother Bassan invited me and another member of Waco Lodge down, as well as my fiance, and we hopped onto a parade float.
Yeah.
And
Saw those pictures.
it was a really fun time, and it's an amazing event, which honestly maybe we should do a whole episode on it sometime, but just briefly I'll say it's the largest celebration of George Washington in the world, something like 400,000 people, and they do this really neat international ceremony where a child in traditional Mexican colonial clothing and a child in, or I guess children, so a boy and a girl in the former, and a boy and a girl in traditional American colonial clothing meet at the International Bridge, which is the largest inland port of the United States, and they embrace in a hug as a sign of international solidarity.
Wow.
And it's all in memory of George Washington. So pretty cool event.
That is cool stuff, man. Well, on my end, I've been doing some artifact hunting as well as always, adding to the little archive behind me here. Coolest thing I found lately is this medallion that I never knew existed. I shared this online, but this is 1906 medallion. I don't know if it's going to get a very focused in there, but it's actually the seal of the Grand Lodge of Kansas. And
it looks a lot better than mine did.
Yeah, well, looking on the back here, you can tell that there used to be, a ribbon that went up and it probably pinned onto your suit, and it would have been a breast jewel. But never even knew this existed, and I got it for a steal, so I was really, really pleased to add that in there. It's the definition off, I could get a focused pictures is really, really cool. But other than that, is I've been in this kick of me and Robert with the Lodge of Research. We announced this year we're doing and it just ties right in with Historical Light, obviously, starting a new project where we are striving to get all the lodges in Kansas to have their lodge minutes digitally archived. So we've put together a really cool archival kit that we're going to be shooting out to the lodges, and try to save all their history, get them into a exclusive Kansas Lodge Research database where you can go in there and search all this lodge history at your fingertips, which will be awesome. So what I've been into lately is kind of recovering some of the lost history all over the internet from Kansas, but we got Ben-Hur Lodge here. Still haven't dove into this one yet, but I'm totally wanting to. And Ben-Hur is an active lodge still today. Very good lodge. Got some guys there that I know. They're epic Masons. But then we have Call Lodge 2. Really, this one I'm pretty confident is not a existing lodge anymore. But this is Call Lodge 272. And really, before I even knew it was a Kansas lodge, it was just that, I don't know, the front of that book drew me in really hardcore. That just very well done. It's simple, but I love it. Just good stuff. Robert, you got any final thoughts beyond that?
I guess all I'd really want to say is two things. First, I checked, and it looks like the conspiracy theorists have already started to blame coronavirus on Freemasonry through Kobe Bryant and a few other strange references. So that's out there. It's on the internet. So
So it must
hopefully people who have actual rational minds can see that what we're talking about here, where Grand Lodges across the country in an almost unprecedented way are suspending Masonic activity. In fact, we're scared to death that our members are going to get it and die. So obviously it is not something we designed or inflicted upon the world. The second thing I'd like to say is we are committed to trying to produce extra content in the coming weeks and months. If you're out there, you're listening, shoot us some ideas, some Masonic history topics you'd like to see us cover. Alex and I both have a few in mind already, but we're going to try to produce some extra content because we know many of you are not going to be able to go to lodge. And this may be the only way many guys are going to be able to scratch their Masonic itch, so to speak. So a couple weeks ago, I gave a Masonic lecture in a lodge in Virginia. It was done virtually. Alex and I have done several of those kinds of educational seminars through either the Kansas Lodge of Research or just independently. It is something we have the capability to do, and it's 100% possible for, despite the fact that your lodge may not be allowed to meet right now, if each of your guys can just get onto the internet from the comfort of your own home, we could potentially set up a video chat room and provide you with some Masonic education, Masonic history talks, and discussion, and get as close as we can to having a Masonic gathering. So if you guys want that, you'll just have to let us know.
Very well said. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, man. I know we had chatted about that, and it's so true. We've definitely got the means, we've got the will, we've got the passion. It's kind of cool that in that sense, a lot of what guys say they're missing in lodge is that educational experience. We don't have to be in a tiled setting all the time to have that. There's so much we can do outside of that. And we see that, with the stuff we've been doing, like you said, with Kansas Lodge Research and elsewhere. We've had some epic discussions, and yeah, let's utilize this time, let's grow. We're Masons. We don't stop. We see blemishes, we go for them, and we fix and we expand. So yeah, keep that in mind, guys. Let us know what is going on in your mind and where you want to be. Are you a Masonic scholar? We want to hear from you. Are you just starting out in that path? Let's make it happen. Let's get together and have a chat. There's so many ways we can do that. We can do educational panels. We can do small groups. Yeah, I'm free. Robert's free. Let's do it. So guys, hop over to the Masonic Research Group on Facebook for Historical Light. Let us know what you thought about the show. Let us know what you think about this virus and how it's affecting your Masonry and your grand jurisdiction and your independent lodge. And more than that, if your lodge has a time period that you are in darkness right now, let us know how we can bring that light to you. With that, As a reminder, hit us up over on Patreon. Give us a hat tip. We'd be much appreciative of that. And we will see you all next time. Keep saving history. See you, brothers.